What if everything you thought you knew about power, religion, and reality itself was built on a lie? A lie so well hidden that even today, millions unknowingly bow before it? I'm talking about the black cube of Saturn, a symbol more terrifying than any cross, crown, or star. For centuries, secret societies and global elites have performed rituals around it, believing this cube holds the ultimate key to control over humanity. This isn't conspiracy speculation. It's a pattern carved into history, hidden in plain sight, from ancient temples to the financial capitals of our modern world. In this video, why the elites worship the black cube, the terrifying cult of Saturn explained. You're going to discover the truth most religions, governments, and even schools of science have worked hard to bury. Why do the elites worship the black cube? Why does this simple shape appear in the world's most sacred sites, in corporate architecture, and even in your daily life without you ever noticing? And what does this have to do with the Saturn cult, a hidden religion that still manipulates the destiny of billions today? The paradox is chilling. To the masses, the cube represents order, structure, and stability. But to those in the know, it's a prison of souls, a time trap engineered to enslave consciousness itself. And here's the shocking part. Once you see the terrifying Saturn symbolism for what it really is, you'll never look at reality the same way again. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear is not just history, it's the forbidden knowledge of Saturn that could shatter everything you thought was normal. Imagine this. What if the most terrifying prison humanity has ever known doesn't have bars, chains, or guards, but takes the shape of a cube, heavy and silent, pressing on the soul itself? The black cube of Saturn is whispered about in hidden traditions as the most powerful occult black cube in existence, more feared than any cross or crown. It is said to hold within it the very architecture of reality, a structure that bends time, enslaves consciousness, and marks the destiny of every living being. Think about how strange it is that this cube keeps showing up in monuments, rituals, and symbols across cultures. Is it coincidence, or could there be a secret cult of Saturn shaping the way civilizations evolve? For the seeker willing to look deeper, the cube of Saturn mystery reveals itself as more than a symbol. It becomes a mechanism. People often wonder why elites worship black cube altars in silence, why they gather in secret places to honor Saturn symbolism as if it were their hidden religion. The answer lies in the way this cube represents limitation and containment. Just as a box can keep an object trapped inside, the occult black cube is believed to confine the human soul within the endless cycles of birth and death. And while most dismiss it as myth, ancient mystics taught that those who ignore its influence are the ones most controlled by it. Think about your daily life for a moment. Have you noticed how time itself seems to control you, like an invisible hand directing your every move? Deadlines, routines, aging, it all feels like a prison made of hours and minutes. This is what the Saturn prison of souls truly means. The cube is not only a structure in myth, but the very foundation of the Saturn time trap we all live in. And the elites, those who align themselves with the Saturnian cult, understand that whoever controls time controls destiny. That's why they revere it, because in their eyes, the black cube occult meaning is about mastery over human limitation. Now here's where it gets unsettling. Imagine walking into a modern city and looking closely at the corporate architecture around you. Glass skyscrapers shaped like cubes, black cube sculptures placed in public squares, and mysterious memorials designed around occult geometry. Saturn has inspired for centuries. Most people walk past these structures without ever questioning why they exist. But to the elites and Saturn worship explained through their symbols, these are not just art pieces. They are declarations of allegiance, silent prayers made of stone and steel, and once you notice them, you can't unsee them. I'll share a personal story. Years ago, while traveling, I found myself standing in front of a massive cube monument in a city plaza. At first, it looked like abstract art. But as I stood there, I felt something heavy in the air, like an unseen pressure, almost magnetic. Only later did I learn that this monument was designed intentionally, tied to the same Saturn symbolism that traces back to ancient temples. That moment convinced me that the cube is not just metaphorical, it radiates influence in ways science hasn't dared to explain yet. It's like being pulled into a forbidden knowledge Saturn itself guards. Let's make this practical. The next time you see a black cube, whether in architecture, logos, or ritual spaces, ask yourself who placed it there and why. Try journaling your encounters. Write down every time you spot one and notice the patterns. You'll quickly realize that elites and Saturn worship are woven into the fabric of society more than you imagined. This isn't superstition, it's pattern recognition. When you connect these dots, the cube stops being just a symbol and starts feeling like a network of control. And once you see the network, you begin to understand how deep the rabbit hole really goes. So here's the paradox. The cube is at once the most familiar shape and the most terrifying Saturn symbolism we carry across time. It feels safe, structured, reliable, but within its 6 faces lies a trap older than civilization itself. The forbidden knowledge Saturn hides is not simply about astronomy or myth, but about the very cage humanity is born into. And while some fear this truth, others, the elites, embrace it, aligning themselves with the terrifying Saturn symbolism that promises power at the cost of freedom. But if the cube is the prison, what force created the warden who built it? That's a question ancient myths tried to answer, and it leads us directly to the shadow of Saturn as the devourer of ages. When people hear the name Saturn, they often picture a planet with rings, distant and cold. But in ancient myths, Saturn wasn't a planet. It was a god, a devourer, a terrifying force that shaped destiny. The Greeks called him Kronos, the father who ate his own children to prevent them from overthrowing him. This story isn't just a myth. It's Saturn's symbolism at its rawest form, time-consuming everything it creates. Imagine living in an age where people truly believed the black cube of Saturn was the architect of such cosmic law. Suddenly, the myths don't feel so distant. They feel like coded warnings about the Saturn prison of souls we still live in today. The Romans rebranded him as Saturn, Lord of the Golden Age, ruling a time when abundance flourished, but only under his control. This paradox of Saturn, both liberator and jailer, mirrors the cube of Saturn mystery that fascinates occultists. On one hand, Saturn gave structure, laws, harvest, the rhythm of seasons. On the other, he set limits, boundaries, and punishment for breaking cosmic order. Elites worship black cube symbols because they see in Saturn a model of control, reward and restriction, freedom and chains. It's the same cycle you find in every empire, every government, every hidden order that has ever existed. Travel further back, and you meet Ninurta, the Babylonian god tied to Saturn. He wasn't the gentle guardian of crops, but a fierce enforcer of cosmic law, the executioner of divine judgment. To the Babylonians, the occult black cube wasn't abstract. It was the throne of Ninurta, the block of law and order where destinies were sealed. Think about that, a cube, solid and immovable, serving as the very foundation of justice. This terrifying Saturn symbolism makes sense when you realize that societies feared chaos so much they preferred a prison of order. And what better prison than one built by the god of time himself? Now let's bring this into the present. Every time you check your clock, calendar or schedule, you're living inside the same Saturn time trap the ancients described with myths of Kronos and Saturn. Time gives us structure, work hours, birthdays, anniversaries, but it also devours us. Each tick of the clock is like Kronos swallowing another piece of our lives. The elites and Saturn worship explained through ancient myths still echo today. The cube hasn't disappeared, it has simply shifted from temples to our wristwatches, from rituals in Rome to the very systems that define modern life. Picture this, a farmer in Rome praying to Saturn for a good harvest, while fearing the god's wrath if he disobeys the rituals. Fast forward to now, you working late at night, praying for enough time, fearing the punishment of missing deadlines. The pattern hasn't changed, only the form. This is the black cube occult, meaning hidden in plain sight. Time as a cage, Saturn as the jailer. The Saturnian cult knew this, and that's why their worship of the cube was never superstition. It was survival. They weren't just honoring a god, they were negotiating with time itself. And here's where elites worship black cube altars differently than common people ever did. For the masses, Saturn was a god to be feared and appeased. For the elites, Saturn was a force to be harnessed. By aligning themselves with the Saturn cult, they believed they could escape the fate of the masses, becoming the devourers rather than the devoured. This secret cult of Saturn understood that by embracing terrifying Saturn symbolism, they could build dynasties that lasted centuries, while ordinary people remained trapped in cycles of work, struggle, and death. Doesn't that sound familiar when you look at today's global hierarchy? The myths all converge on one point. Saturn is both creator and destroyer. He builds the house but locks the doors. He offers freedom but at the cost of submission. And within this paradox lies the deeper forbidden knowledge Saturn has always represented. The cube doesn't just trap, it also reveals the blueprint of how to escape. But the question is, escape to where? If the myths of Kronos, Saturn, and Ninurta are different masks of the same black cube of Saturn, then what lies behind those masks? That question takes us to the birth of the cube itself, where geometry and destiny first became one. The cube has always fascinated humanity. At first glance, it's just a simple shape, 6 equal sides, balanced and predictable. But when tied to Saturn, it becomes something else entirely. The occult black cube, a container of souls and a reflection of cosmic law. Ancient mystics saw the cube as the essence of limitation, 6 directions, up, down, left, right, forward, backward, marking the prison walls of human existence. That's why the cube of Saturn mystery isn't just geometry, it's philosophy. Imagine realizing that your entire life unfolds within invisible walls built by time and matter, a structure designed by Saturn itself. The connection between Saturn and the cube is not random. Look at Saturn's North Pole, where a hexagonal storm rotates endlessly, defying explanation. That 6-sided form is the flat projection of a cube, an echo of occult geometry Saturn has encoded into the very planet. To initiates of the Saturnian cult, this was proof that the black cube of Saturn is more than a human invention. It's a cosmic reality. The elites worship black cube symbols because they believe they are aligning themselves with the architecture of the universe. For them, it's not belief, it's physics wrapped in myth. Think of the cube as the ultimate symbol of order. While a circle flows endlessly, a cube traps and contains. The Saturn symbolism here is terrifying. Life seems free, yet invisible walls exist. When you wake, work, eat, and sleep, you're moving within a cube-shaped schedule, your own personal prison of time. The Saturn time trap works because it feels natural, like the ticking of a clock or the turning of seasons. But those who study the black cube occult, meaning no, it's not just about daily life, it's about existence itself. Every soul, they say, is trapped within Saturn's cube until it awakens. Here's a practical analogy. Imagine you're playing chess. The board is a cube-like grid, structured, ordered, limiting every move you can make. No matter how creative you are, you must play within the rules of the board. This is how the Saturn prison of souls operates. Humanity is clever, inventive, restless, but always confined by Saturn's geometry. The elites and Saturn worship explained through this lens reveals why they adore the cube. They see themselves as the players who know the rules, while everyone else is just a pawn unaware of the board's true shape. Now let's bring in the esoteric schools. The Kabbalah speaks of the cube as a manifestation of Malkuth, the earthly kingdom, the densest and most material realm. Occultists viewed the black cube of Saturn as a crystallization of divine energy into rigid matter, where freedom is forgotten and form dominates. The forbidden knowledge Saturn guards is this: matter itself may be nothing more than a spiritual trap, a cage built with walls of geometry. That's why elites worship black cube altars, to remind themselves they hold the keys to unlock, or at least manipulate, that prison. But here's the twist. Within the cube lies the potential for transcendence. A cube unfolded becomes a cross, a symbol of release and expansion. This paradox is why the Saturn cult has always treated the cube as sacred. It binds, but it also reveals a hidden door. Those who meditate on the cube say it whispers secrets of order and chaos, teaching how to bend rules instead of being broken by them. This terrifying Saturn symbolism frightens the masses but empowers the elites, who dare to interpret the cube not as a cage, but as a manual for control. And so, the birth of the cube marks the birth of human limitation and human potential. It is at once the box we live in and the tool to break free. This duality is why the black cube occult meaning persists in every corner of history, from ancient temples to corporate skyscrapers. But if the cube represents order and control, then who were the first to worship it, to build entire civilizations around its geometry? That question leads us into the shadows of civilization itself, where the cult of the cube began to shape empires and command the loyalty of elites. When you trace history carefully, you'll find the black cube of Saturn lurking behind the curtains of every great civilization. While people bowed before gods of sun, war, and fertility, secret orders bowed before something darker, an object that didn't shine, didn't bleed, but simply stood, unshakable, the cube. For these hidden priests, the occult black cube symbolized permanence in a world of chaos. They believed that by venerating it, they tapped into Saturn's cold authority over time and destiny. To outsiders, it looked like stone. To the initiated, it was the silent throne of reality itself. Think about the Kaaba in Mecca, the most famous cube-shaped sanctuary on Earth. Millions circle around it in devotion, yet few ask why the holiest site is a black cube. Scholars debate its origins, but to those who study forbidden knowledge Saturn has guarded for ages, the meaning is clear. The cube has always been an altar of cosmic alignment. And it doesn't stop there. Throughout cultures, from Mesopotamian ziggurats to modern memorials, elites worship black cube monuments as if they were portals to the Saturn prison of souls. The pattern is undeniable once you open your eyes. Secret societies have long built their temples in cube form. Masonic lodges, esoteric brotherhoods, and ancient priesthoods encoded the cube in their architecture, their rituals, their geometry. Why? Because the Saturnian cult believed that the cube was not just symbolic, but functional, a machine that channels order into matter. The Saturn symbolism here is chilling. When the cube is invoked, freedom bends into obedience, chaos becomes hierarchy. That's why the elites and Saturn worship explained through their hidden traditions always returns to the cube. It's the anchor of control they never abandon. I once spoke with a scholar who described entering a lodge where every object was cube-shaped, from the altar to the pedestals. He said the atmosphere felt dense, as if time itself moved slower inside. That's the black cube occult meaning in practice. It alters perception, bends energy, and reminds those inside that they are not free spirits, but initiates bound to Saturn's law. This is not a coincidence. It's the architecture of belief. The cube is not decoration, it's doctrine carved into stone. You can see echoes of this cult even in modern cities. Look around at the financial districts of New York, London, or Dubai. Massive black cube sculptures stand in the heart of commerce. Why finance? Because money is time crystallized, the most practical extension of the Saturn time trap. Elites worship black cube monuments in these districts to silently proclaim their loyalty to Saturn's order. Wealth concentrated, power confined, freedom limited. Next time you pass one, stop for a moment and notice how people instinctively gather around, take photos, or sit nearby, as if drawn unconsciously into the ritual. For ordinary people, the cube is invisible, just another piece of urban art. But for the elites, these are altars, seats of power where Saturnian rituals can unfold unnoticed. Processions, oaths, meditations before obsidian black stones. These practices never disappeared, they only evolved. The terrifying Saturn symbolism lies in the fact that society doesn't need to believe in the cube for it to work. The cult of Saturn thrives on secrecy. Its power comes from being hidden in plain sight, operating quietly beneath the everyday lives of millions. And so, from ancient priesthoods to corporate plazas, the black cube of Saturn has remained the hidden spine of human civilization. The Saturn cult has always known that whoever controls the cube controls society. But what gives this cube its true force isn't worship alone. It's the mechanism inside it, the metaphysical engine that binds humanity through time itself. To understand that, we need to look at Saturn's prison in a new light, not as myth, but as the machinery of time and enslavement. Most people believe time is natural, sunrise, sunset, the ticking of a clock. But in the hidden teachings of the Saturnian cult, time is the greatest prison ever built, and its warden is Saturn. The black cube of Saturn is more than a symbol. It's the engine of the Saturn time trap, locking humanity into cycles of birth, suffering, and death. Imagine running on a treadmill that never stops, believing you're moving forward, while in truth, you're stuck in place. That's how the Saturn prison of souls operates, through the illusion of progress while the walls of the cube remain unbroken. Ancient mystics often described life as a wheel. You're born, you live, you die, and then you start again. The occult black cube is the hidden geometry that keeps the wheel spinning. Every culture had a word for it. Karma in the East, fate in Greece, divine judgment in Mesopotamia. But the elites and Saturn worship explained it differently. They saw it as a technology. To them, the cube is not metaphor but mechanism, a metaphysical machine that holds consciousness in check. It doesn't just track time, it manufactures it. And once you see this, clocks and calendars feel less like tools and more like shackles. Here's a practical way to feel it. Think about your alarm clock. It wakes you, directs you, commands you. Miss it, and your whole day collapses into stress. That's the black cube occult meaning working silently. Your sense of freedom is measured in hours, your worth measured in productivity. The terrifying Saturn symbolism is that no one escapes. Everyone, rich or poor, bows before the authority of the clock. Elites worship black cube altars because they don't just follow time, they believe they command it, bending the prison walls for themselves while the masses remain trapped. In the esoteric traditions, Saturn was not merely a planet, but the architect of linear time. Unlike the eternal present some mystics spoke of, Saturn forced existence into a straight line, past, present, future. This Saturn symbolism is brutal yet effective. Once consciousness believes it's chained to time, it loses sight of eternity. The cube of Saturn mystery is that it doesn't need force to enslave. Belief is enough. Humanity lives as if time were unbreakable law, while the Saturn cult whispers that only the initiated can step outside the ticking prison. Consider the world of finance again. Money is nothing but frozen time, hours of labor converted into numbers. That's why modern economies are covered in cube monuments, why elites and Saturn worship symbols are tied to banks and stock exchanges. It's not by chance. They understand that to enslave souls, you don't need chains. You need schedules, contracts, debts. The Saturn time trap ensures people spend their lives trading minutes for survival. This is why the black cube of Saturn remains the elite's most sacred emblem. It is the invisible engine of obedience. And here's the paradox. While the cube imprisons, it also reveals a possible escape. Mystics who studied forbidden knowledge, Saturn concealed, claimed that by shifting awareness beyond linear time, the prison loses power. Practices like deep meditation, lucid dreaming, or even silence at dawn were believed to crack the cube's walls, letting glimpses of eternity slip through. But elites worship black cube rituals not to escape, but to reinforce their dominance, making sure the masses never discover those cracks. The Saturn cult thrives not by destroying freedom outright, but by convincing people that freedom never existed. So the mechanics of Saturn's prison are not violent. They're subtle, elegant, terrifying. The cube doesn't need guards because the prisoner polices himself. Time becomes the chain, and matter becomes the cell. But what makes this system even more disturbing is the reason elites cling to it so desperately. Why do they choose to worship the black cube of Saturn instead of seeking liberation? The answer lies in their obsession with power, control, and dominion. A subject that pulls us deeper into their hidden religion and explains why they will never let the cube go. The deeper you dig, the clearer it becomes. Elites don't just study Saturn, they bow to it. For them, the black cube of Saturn is more than a symbol. It's the cornerstone of their authority. Why? Because aligning with the Saturn cult means aligning with the architect of time itself. If time rules everyone, then those who claim to master time rule the world. This is why elites worship black cube monuments in their cities, why they gather around cube-shaped sanctuaries, why Saturn symbolism saturates their secret emblems. They aren't playing with superstition, they're binding themselves to the force that enslaves humanity. From the perspective of the masses, Saturn feels like oppression, deadlines, aging, cycles that never end. But from the perspective of the elites, the occult black cube is a throne. By embracing the Saturn time trap, they turn chains into crowns. They've learned to profit from the Saturn prison of souls by creating systems, banks, corporations, governments that mirror Saturn's cold order. Every law, contract, and tax is another wall of the cube. And while most people feel trapped, the elites see themselves as the wardens, living above the rules that bind everyone else. Take wealth, for example. Money is frozen time, and the elites know how to manipulate it. That's why financial districts are filled with cube monuments. Elites worship black cube structures there not for decoration, but as talismans of dominion. They see money as Saturn's most refined tool, an invisible leash around billions of necks. This terrifying Saturn symbolism explains why hierarchies never crumble completely. They are modeled after the Saturnian cult's own obsession with permanence, order, and unbreakable control. What looks like random inequality is, in fact, a ritualized reflection of Saturn's cube. I remember once sitting with a historian who said, "Empires rise and fall, but Saturn's cult never dies." And he was right. Look at Rome, Babylon, even modern superpowers. The same cube appears in their architecture, the same rituals whispered behind closed doors. The elites and Saturn worship explained in this context isn't just about personal faith, it's about continuity. They believe that by venerating the black cube occult meaning, they connect with an ancient current of power that outlives dynasties. It's less about belief and more about inheritance, passing Saturn's throne from one generation of elites to the next. You might wonder, do these elites truly believe the cube gives them power, or is it symbolic? The answer is both. In Saturnian rituals, symbols are not decoration, they are contracts. When an elite swears an oath before the black cube of Saturn, he isn't just bowing to stone, he's entering a pact. This is the secret cult of Saturn at work, binding its followers with terrifying Saturn symbolism that demands loyalty in exchange for dominion. It's a trade they gladly accept because the prize is control of people, of wealth, of destiny itself. Here's where it gets disturbing. While ordinary people avoid Saturn's shadow, elites embrace it. They see suffering, limitation, and fear not as curses but as resources. The Saturn symbolism of oppression becomes their ladder to power. They build institutions where the masses feel crushed, while they feed on the energy of obedience. It's why their hidden religion never seeks liberation from the cube. It thrives on it. The Saturn cult teaches that only by mastering the prison can you rise above the prisoners. And this is exactly why elites worship black cube rituals so obsessively. So the obsession of the elites is not madness, it's strategy. By binding themselves to Saturn's cold logic, they gain the stability, order, and hierarchy that keeps them on top. For them, the black cube of Saturn is a weapon, a contract, a throne, all in one. But to truly understand how far their devotion goes, you must look at the rituals they perform in secrecy, rituals that are not symbolic gestures but binding contracts with the Saturn black sun, practices that echo through blood oaths and midnight processions. And it's here in these hidden rituals that the full terror of Saturn worship is revealed. Behind closed doors, away from the public eye, the elites perform rituals most people would dismiss as superstition. But in their eyes, these Saturnian rituals are contracts with the forces that built the prison of time. They gather before the black cube of Saturn, not with hymns or prayers, but with silence, incense, and oaths. Some traditions involve circling black stones, mimicking the cosmic cycles of Saturn's rings. Others meditate before obsidian mirrors, hoping to glimpse the Saturn black sun that illuminates the prison of souls. To them, the cube is alive, a witness to their devotion. In ancient accounts, initiates walked around cube-shaped altars exactly 7 times, binding themselves to Saturn's authority. Today, the practice survives in modernized forms, elite groups circling monuments, performing processions around hidden cubes, chanting in coded language. These acts aren't mere symbolism. To the secret cult of Saturn, repetition and geometry create resonance, a bridge between human consciousness and the occult black cube. That's why these rituals endure, because they believe each step, each word, is recorded within the cube of Saturn mystery, sealing the practitioner's allegiance. Blood oaths are another chilling part of these rites. Whispered about in old grimoires, these vows were sworn beneath the stars of Saturn, where elites worship black cube altars as sacred judges. The oath-takers promised loyalty not only to their order, but to Saturn itself. Breaking such a vow was said to invoke curses of endless nightmares and crushing synchronicities. This terrifying Saturn symbolism was no empty threat. Those who defected often found their lives unraveling in strange, almost scripted ways. It's as if the cube itself enforced the contract. I once read an account of a traveler who attended a clandestine ritual in the Middle East. He described a circle of men dressed in dark robes, gathered around a polished black cube stone under the night sky. They chanted in unison, their voices creating a low vibration that seemed to thicken the air. The traveler claimed the cube vibrated back, as if humming in response. Skeptics might laugh, but to those who study forbidden knowledge Saturn has hidden, this aligns perfectly with the idea that the cube isn't just symbol, but machine, an interface between humans and cosmic order. Some rituals involve sound, deep tones, like the droning of Tibetan horns or the hum of sacred syllables, are used to wake the Saturn prison of souls. Practitioners believe that resonance opens gateways, briefly pulling back the veil of the Saturn time trap. The elites and Saturn worship explained in this light shows that their practices are less about worship and more about alignment. They are not asking Saturn for favors. They are syncing themselves with the cube's rhythm, hoping to wield its authority. Another layer involves meditation before darkness itself, in rooms with no light, initiates focus on obsidian or black mirrors, waiting for visions of the Saturn black sun. What they often report are corridors, endless halls, crushing geometries, a terrifying Saturn symbolism that mirrors descriptions of the afterlife in ancient texts. To the Saturn cult, these visions are not nightmares, but confirmations, proof that the cube contains realities beyond our own, guarded by forces only the brave or the reckless would dare to face. These rituals are rarely public, yet their influence seeps into society. Festivals timed with Saturn's alignments, corporate events that mimic ancient processions, even pop culture performances drenched in Saturn symbolism all echo these hidden practices. For the elites, rituals are how they renew their pact with the cube. For us, they are signals, reminders that the occult black cube is still alive in the shadows. But the real question is, who or what answers when these rituals are performed? That mystery leads us into the next veil, the entities said to dwell within the cube itself, the keepers of Saturn's prison. If the black cube of Saturn is truly a prison, then someone, or something, must guard it. Ancient texts hint at entities that dwell within the cube, not demons in the folkloric sense, but wardens of reality itself. They are described as shadowy intelligences, feeding on fear and obedience, ensuring no soul escapes the Saturn prison of souls. Some call them archons, others gatekeepers, but all agree on one thing. They exist to preserve the Saturn time trap. And just like prison guards, they don't need to be loved, they only need to be obeyed. Stories from Gnostic traditions describe these beings as architects of matter. They carved the 6 faces of the occult black cube, filling it with laws that bind every creature. Imagine laws not written on paper, but engraved into the very geometry of existence. The elites worship black cube symbols partly because they believe these entities grant them access to hidden codes, cheat sheets for bending the rules of the prison. The terrifying Saturn symbolism here is that what we call natural law might be nothing more than their program, their design. Some mystics describe encountering them in dreams. They appear as figures of impossible geometry, humanoids with angular faces, or beings made of shifting cubes and hexagons. They don't speak in words, but in impressions, pulses of meaning that shake the soul. Those who have felt their presence say it's like standing before a judge who already knows your verdict. This is the cube of Saturn mystery. When you enter its realm, there is no pretense of freedom. You are measured, weighed, and reminded of your limits. It's no wonder elites and Saturn worship explained in these terms has such an aura of fear. I recall reading about a monk who meditated daily before a black cube stone until one night he claimed to see a towering figure emerge, faceless but radiating authority. The monk described it as the cold gaze of time itself. He left the order soon after, saying he could no longer ignore the reality of the Saturn cult and its entities. Skeptics dismiss such accounts as hallucinations, But for those studying forbidden knowledge Saturn guards, these encounters fit perfectly with centuries of testimonies. The same story told in different languages, different symbols, always pointing to the same truth. Interestingly, these entities are not always portrayed as evil. In some accounts, they are neutral, simply enforcing cosmic order, like clock hands ticking without malice. The occult black cube, then, is not a dungeon built out of cruelty but out of function. Just as gravity holds us to Earth, the keepers of Saturn hold us in the Saturn time trap. The elites worship black cube forces not to destroy these rules, but to befriend the wardens, to gain permission to bend time in their favor. It's a chilling thought that power is granted not by rebellion, but by collaboration with the jailers. Some traditions even warn that the keepers of the cube test the seeker. If you search for forbidden knowledge, Saturn hides, you will be confronted. Nightmares of endless corridors, dreams of suffocation, synchronicities that force you into choices. These are their methods. The terrifying Saturn symbolism isn't just a metaphor, it's initiation by ordeal. Those who pass the test gain insight. Those who fail sink deeper into the Saturn prison of souls. And the elites, through ritual and oath, believe they have found ways to pass these trials by proxy without facing the full weight of the cube's guardians. So the entities within remain the most elusive part of the Saturnian mystery. They are feared, revered, invoked, and avoided, yet their presence is undeniable across myths and mystical accounts. But once someone learns they exist, once they dare to peer into the heart of the occult black cube, something shifts. The cube is no longer passive, it begins to notice. And when it notices, the game changes, because now it's not only you watching the cube, it's the cube watching you. That realization takes us to the next veil, the consequences of knowing too much when the black cube starts to gaze back. The greatest danger of studying the black cube of Saturn isn't ridicule, it's recognition. Once you begin to see its patterns, the cube seems to see you back. People who have dived too deeply into forbidden knowledge Saturn conceals often report strange phenomena. Dreams of endless corridors, shadows at the edge of vision, sudden bursts of synchronicity that feel orchestrated. It's as though the Saturn prison of souls notices your curiosity and tightens its grip. The occult black cube doesn't reward curiosity lightly. It tests it, weighs it, and sometimes punishes it. Nightmares are one of the first signs. Seekers describe dreaming of crushing geometries, massive cubes descending from the sky, or being locked in rooms with no exits. These aren't just bad dreams, they feel scripted, deliberate, as if directed by the terrifying Saturn symbolism itself. Elites worship black cube rituals because they believe such dreams are not curses, but communication. Messages from the Saturnian cult's guardians, confirming contact has been made. For the uninitiated, though, the same dreams feel like psychological torture, eroding sanity. Synchronicities follow close behind. You start noticing Saturn symbolism everywhere, cubes in architecture, hexagons in nature, time-related coincidences. At first it feels empowering, like uncovering a secret code in reality, but soon the pattern becomes overwhelming, impossible to ignore. This is the cube of Saturn mystery. Once you learn the language, you can't unlearn it. It's like seeing the clockwork behind life's stage and realizing every move was rehearsed. For some, this awakening is thrilling. For others, it's suffocating. A reminder that the Saturn time trap leaves no real escape. I once spoke with a woman who studied esoteric texts on Saturn for years. She told me that after months of research, she began hearing a faint hum at night, like a vibration coming from nowhere. Doctors found nothing wrong, yet the sound persisted. Eventually, she said it grew stronger when she meditated on the black cube occult meaning. Was it her mind playing tricks? Or was it the cube acknowledging her attention? She swore that the more she tried to ignore it, the louder it became. It was as if Saturn itself was whispering, "I see you. This is the double-edged sword of forbidden knowledge Saturn guards. Awareness brings clarity, but it also invites surveillance. The Saturnian cult has always warned initiates that curiosity is not neutral. It creates a bond. Imagine gazing into a mirror for too long and suddenly realizing the reflection isn't following you anymore. It's acting on its own. That's what seekers describe when the cube begins to watch. The elites worship black cube practices because they consider this surveillance a blessing, proof that they've been acknowledged by the cosmic warden. But for ordinary seekers, it can feel like losing autonomy. And here lies the cruel paradox. Knowledge meant to free can deepen the prison. The Saturn prison of souls tightens its grip on those who lack discipline, pulling them into paranoia, obsession, or despair. The terrifying Saturn symbolism works like a test. You wanted to see the truth. Now you can't look away. Only those who cultivate balance, humility, and inner strength can bear the cube's gaze without shattering. That's why the Saturn cult trains its initiates carefully, preparing them for the moment the cube begins to gaze back. Without preparation, the seeker risks being consumed, so the consequences of knowledge are profound. Once the cube acknowledges you, you are no longer just a bystander, you are a participant in its drama. The black cube of Saturn becomes less a symbol and more a presence in your life, and that presence demands a choice: submit to its authority, or seek the forbidden door hidden within its walls. Because the ultimate truth whispered by mystics is that the cube is not only cage, it can also be a key. But to turn that key, one must dare to face the final veil, breaking the seal of Saturn itself. The final revelation is this: the black cube of Saturn is not only a cage, it is also the key. For centuries, mystics whispered that those who truly understood the cube's terrifying Saturn symbolism could learn to break its seal. But breaking it does not mean destroying the prison. It means seeing through it. Just as a magician escapes chains by understanding how they are built, the seeker who deciphers the Saturn prison of souls discovers the illusion of its power. Elites worship black cube altars to preserve control, but the true initiate learns to use awareness as liberation. Think about the cube unfolded, 6 squares expanding into the shape of a cross. To the Saturnian cult, this unfolding was the blueprint of both confinement and transcendence. The occult black cube traps energy, but when opened, it reveals expansion, freedom, and light. This paradox is why forbidden knowledge Saturn hides is so dangerous. If the masses realized the cube could be unfolded, its authority would collapse. That's why the elites and Saturn worship explained in secrecy never show the cube's other face. They want obedience, not liberation. The path to breaking the seal often begins with awareness of time itself. When you stop treating the clock as your master and start treating it as a tool, the Saturn time trap loses part of its grip. Practices like meditation, conscious breathing, or even simple moments of stillness can remind you that time isn't absolute. It's perception. The black cube occult meaning is not to terrify you, but to challenge you. If you can live outside the tick of the clock, even for a moment, you begin to touch eternity. That is the first crack in the cube's walls. I once met a man who spent his life studying Saturnian rituals. He told me the real secret wasn't in the rituals themselves, but in the silence after them. When the chanting stops, he said, listen closely. That silence is the sound of freedom. He believed that elites worship black cube oaths to bind themselves to authority, while the true initiate learns to step beyond oaths entirely. The terrifying Saturn symbolism then becomes a teacher. reminding you of your chains until you finally realize they were illusions all along. But liberation isn't easy. The Saturn cult thrives because most people fear freedom more than imprisonment. To leave the Saturn prison of souls is to step into the unknown, without clocks, without guarantees, without the safety of rules. That's why the elite's hidden religion works so well. It offers order in exchange for submission. The secret cult of Saturn doesn't need to force obedience. Most people willingly bow, preferring the cube's certainty to the chaos beyond. Breaking the seal requires courage most never dare to summon. Here's the paradox. Those who worship the cube are bound, but those who see through it are free. The cube is the test of the soul. Will you accept the Saturn symbolism of order as your permanent fate? Or will you unfold the cube into its hidden cross, stepping into realms beyond time? The black cube of Saturn is terrifying, not because it enslaves, but because it confronts you with choice. And once you see the choice, you can never return to ignorance. The Saturnian cult hides this truth because freedom is contagious, so the initiation ends where it began, with a cube pressing down on the soul. But now you know, the cube is not only weight, it is also a door. To worship it is to submit, but to see through it is to transcend. The elites worship black cube monuments because they crave power. The true seeker learns to break the seal of Saturn, not by destruction, but by awakening. And once you awaken, you understand. The prison was never outside, it was within. What lies beyond, however, is a mystery for the brave alone. Now that you've uncovered the hidden truth behind the black cube of Saturn, the question is no longer what it is, but what you will do with this knowledge. Will you keep walking through life unaware, repeating the cycles that Saturn's prison of souls has set for you? Or will you begin to notice the symbols around you, question the systems you once accepted, and reclaim a piece of your freedom? The choice is yours. But remember, once you've seen the cube, you can't unsee it. Ask yourself, who really benefits from your obedience to time, money, and endless routines? Why do elites worship the black cube while you unknowingly serve its structure every single day? These are not abstract questions. They cut directly into how you live, how you think, how you decide your destiny. If the cube is both cage and key, are you willing to search for the key? Or will you remain locked, like most, believing there's no way out? The terrifying Saturn symbolism you've discovered today is not just history. It's an invitation to open your eyes, to stop living on autopilot, and to recognize the hidden cult of Saturn that still shapes our world. Because the real power of forbidden knowledge Saturn conceals is not in worship, it's in awareness. Awareness is the first act of rebellion. Awareness is the first step toward liberation. So tell me, do you feel the weight of the cube pressing on you now that you know its secrets? Or do you feel the spark of rebellion rising, the urge to finally see beyond the walls of this prison? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might just inspire someone else to break free too. And if you're ready to go deeper, to keep uncovering truths that the elites would rather you never hear, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. That way, you won't miss the next revelation, and step by step, we'll walk this path together, out of the shadows of the cube and into the light of awareness.